Imagine your greatest defense against death isn't a medicine, a prayer, or a physician. It's the thick, unbroken layer of grease and soot sealed across your own skin. In 1348, hot water wasn't a comfort. It was a biological invitation, a way to swing open the gates of your body to the invisible killers drifting through the air. Today we open the vault, and what we find inside isn't just filth. It's a survival system so brutal, so counterintuitive, that it kept an entire civilization alive in the middle of the deadliest pandemic the world has ever recorded. The sound that wakes you in 14th century London is not an alarm. It is rats moving through the rushes beneath your feet. Those dried herbs and grasses spread across the floor haven't been changed in months. Underneath them is a compressed archaeology of daily life. Food scraps, animal droppings, insect colonies, quietly fermenting in the dark. You step onto it barefoot before you've opened your eyes. The basin of water on the table is cold, and even if you could heat it, you wouldn't. Because the medical consensus of 1348 is absolute. Hot water is lethal. Miasma theory, the dominant medical framework of the era, held that disease traveled through corrupted air and entered the body through the pores of the skin. Heat opened those pores. A hot bath was, in the clinical logic of the time, the biological equivalent of unlocking every gate of your fortress during a siege. The physician Guy de Chauliac, one of the most respected medical voices of the era, who survived the Black Death himself and documented it with clinical precision, explicitly warned against bathing during plague. His reasoning wasn't superstition. It was the most rigorous science available, applied with deadly seriousness. So you dip a coarse linen cloth into cold water and wipe your face and hands. That is your entire hygiene routine. The grime coating the rest of your body is not neglect. It is, by the medical logic of 1348, a prophylactic barrier, a biological sealant standing between your pores and the poisoned air filling every alley and market in the city. The medieval physician was wrong about the mechanism. He was not wrong about the danger. The pathogen load in a 14th century urban environment was staggering by any modern standard. Seal the body, minimize exposure. Misguided in its science, instinctively defensive in its logic. While the peasant sealed himself in grime, the nobleman had engineered a more refined solution. Not cleaner, just more expensive. The foundation of aristocratic hygiene was not water. It was fabric. High-quality white linen worn directly against the skin, built around a biological theory that was, by the standards of the era, genuinely sophisticated. The physicians of the time believed sweat carried toxins outward through the pores. The linen undershirt, pressed tight against the skin, acted as a biological filter, absorbing those impurities into the fabric, pulling contamination away from the body without requiring water. The shirt was doing the cleaning. A nobleman changed that shirt 3, sometimes 4 times a day, believing each fresh garment drew another round of toxins from his skin. His body remained untouched by soap or water for weeks. By the medical logic of 1348, he was the cleanest man in the room. This restructured the visual language of status entirely. The bright white edge of a fresh linen cuff was not a fashion choice. It was a forensic signal communicating wealth, power, and biological sophistication in a single glance. Noble household inventories of the period document linen supplies, running into the hundreds of individual garments. Not extravagance, but functional armor cycled through the body's daily biological output. The aristocracy had monetized cleanliness and repackaged it as fabric. And every unwashed nobleman in his 4th fresh shirt of the day believed with complete sincerity that he was purified. Open your mouth in 1348 and you are opening a crime scene. By their mid-30s, the average medieval adult carried cracked enamel, blackened roots, and gaps where teeth had been torn out or collapsed under untreated decay. The medieval smile was strategic. You kept your mouth closed because what was inside told a story of constant biological failure. The morning dental routine was controlled violence. A rough linen cloth wrapped around the finger, dipped in ground salt or crushed animal bone, scrubbed across the teeth with enough abrasive force to remove surface staining, while simultaneously eroding the enamel it was meant to protect. When decay progressed past what friction could manage, the medical explanation waiting on the other side was one of the most persistent theories in the history of human biology. The tooth worm. A small worm living inside the tooth, gnawing at the root from within. Documented across medieval European medical texts, traceable to ancient Mesopotamian records. The treatments ranged from burning henbane seeds near the mouth to drive the worm out, to pressing a hot needle into the cavity to kill it. Neither worked. There was no worm. When the tooth could no longer be managed, you went to the barber surgeon. The same man who cut your hair also extracted your teeth, bracing his knee against your chest for leverage, pulling with a dental pelican until something gave way. No anesthesia. Occasionally alcohol. Archaeological analysis of medieval skeletal remains from London's Spitalfields Cemetery consistently shows severe periodontal disease and multiple extractions in the majority of adult specimens. Oral health in 1348 was not a personal failing. It was a systemic biological catastrophe built into the architecture of the era. Step into a London alley in 1348 and your first instinct is to breathe through your mouth. Then you realize that doesn't help. Medieval chroniclers described approaching London as an olfactory experience that preceded the visual one by miles. You smelled the city before you saw its spires. Even at the pinnacle of civilization inside the castle, the solution to human waste was a stone bench with a hole in it, protruding from the outer wall, suspended above whatever lay below. The garderobe, a deliberate euphemism meaning wardrobe. Gravity was the only infrastructure. What went in accumulated at the bottom through seasons and years, recovered by archaeologists at sites like the Tower of London in staggering volume. But here's the forensic detail that reframes the picture entirely. The most valuable textiles in the household hung directly inside that toilet chamber. The silk robes, the velvet doublets, suspended above the shaft by deliberate design because the ammonia vapors rising from the decomposing waste below killed the fleas and moths that plagued expensive fabric. The medieval nobleman fumigated his wardrobe with human excrement. The bathroom was the pest control system. Descend into the city and the system becomes more desperate. London's streets were surfaced in compressed layers of organic material. Animal dung, food scraps, offal from the butcher districts, straw, mud, and the contents of chamber pots emptied from upper windows. Into this, after dark, descended the gong farmers. Recorded by that exact occupational title in municipal documents, they descended into cess pits by rope, working waist-deep in material decomposing for months, shoveling it by hand. The primary killer was not disease, it was gas. Decomposing organic waste in an enclosed space generates methane and hydrogen sulfide at lethal concentrations within minutes. Municipal records document multiple gong farmers dying inside the pits, not from drowning, but from asphyxiation, killed by the concentrated biological output of the city they kept alive. Above ground, London's sanitation department walked on 4 legs. Pigs roamed freely through the same alleyways where merchants traded and children played, eating what was thrown from windows, what fell from carts, what accumulated overnight. Efficient, self-motivated, and entirely uncontrolled. They consumed the food waste and deposited their own excrement across the same cobblestones. Every solution generated a new problem of equal scale. The tanneries of Bermondsey processed leather in open vats of collected urine mixed with dog feces. A genuine chemical process. Biologically effective, atmospherically catastrophic. The slaughterhouses of shambles drained blood directly into the central gutter. Coal smoke from thousands of poorly ventilated fires hung over everything. The result was a city-wide aerosol of biological and chemical compounds that would trigger immediate industrial intervention by any modern environmental standard. And yet within it, people moved, traded, raised children, and built one of the most economically complex urban environments in Northern Europe. As for what replaced paper, moss, broadleaves, hay, straw, scraps of worn fabric, whatever was within arm's reach, the Romans had come closer with a vinegar-soaked sponge on a stick, but even that modest innovation had been lost. What replaced it was nature, improvised and inadequate. The forensic consequence was systemic. Hands were never properly cleaned. Wiping was mechanically ineffective regardless of material. The transmission pathway for intestinal parasites operated with almost zero resistance. Archaeological excavations of medieval latrines at sites including Dudley Castle and the city of York have recovered parasite eggs in densities that allow researchers to reconstruct infection loads with clinical precision. The conclusion is unambiguous. Close to 100% of the medieval population, across all social classes, carried intestinal parasites permanently. Roundworm, whipworm, tapeworm. Not occasional afflictions. Permanent biological passengers. A parasitic tax extracted silently from every meal, every day, from every body in England, quietly draining the caloric intake of a population that was already hungry. The medieval body was not weak, it was the opposite. Forged in constant biological exposure from the first days of life, the immune system of a 14th century Londoner was calibrated to an environment that would hospitalize a modern human within 48 hours. Analysis of skeletal remains consistently shows that those who survived childhood in medieval urban environments developed immunological resilience of remarkable depth. Not because their biology was different from ours, but because their training environment was incomparably more demanding. The grime was the gym. The pathogens were the curriculum. They were not wrong to fear the air. They were not irrational to distrust hot water. They operated at the absolute edge of what their civilization's knowledge could support. And they built a functional society there anyway. The dirt was not laziness. The sealed skin was not neglect. It was the most sophisticated survival strategy a civilization could construct without microscopes, without germ theory, without any of the foundational science we take for granted. They fought a biological war completely blind, and enough of them survived to build the world that eventually learned how to win it. If this investigation changed how you see the past, subscribe to Vane's Historical Vault right now. Because next week's case is already more disturbing than this one. Drop a comment telling me which detail hit hardest: the gong farmers, the linen theory, or the parasitic tax. That comment directly determines what case we open next. And if you know someone who thinks history is boring, send them this video. Medieval sewage cures that faster than anything.